How's it, everybody? Welcome back to the Rocky Fern. In today's episode of Show Me the Green, we're checking out some awesome Nepenthes. We're checking out Nepenthes edwardsiana. Let's get into it. Okay, so Nepenthes edwardsiana, it's definitely one of those wish list plant type Nepenthes. They're known for their super well-defined toothy peristomes that really just add something to this Nepenthes. Now, there is a big clade of Nepenthes that have very toothy peristomes, but Nepenthes edwardsiana is known for their tremendous size. They're very long and tubular, and they're very well-defined peristomes. Nepenthes edwardsiana is sometimes known as the splendid carnivorous plant. I've never actually called it that, never heard of that, but doing my research, it's definitely something that is passed around quite a bit as the splendid carnivorous plant or the splendid pitcher plant. It is a vining, semi-vining pitcher plant that can also be found growing along moss rocks, terrestrially and whatnot. And it is one of the toothy backbones of the industry that's found in Malaysia, Borneo, from two locations, from Mount Kinabalu and also from a neighboring mountaintop called Tembuyu Khan in Sabah, Malaysia. And they are highland type growing species, so they can be found anywhere from 4,900 to 8,900 feet in elevation. That's 15 to 2,700 meters. So they're up there. They're definitely wanting the cooler temps. What's really cool about Nepenthes edwardsiana is the mountain range that they've evolved on, or the two mountain tops that they've evolved from, historically had an ice summit. And so as recently as like 1,000,000 years ago, so in geological time, that's very recent. And so the species itself is really recent to the evolutionary scene. You can see here that I keep the plant in the same pot that I received it in. And what's really fascinating is it is a very slow growing species. And I've heard once they actually get some size and then they'll actually start to really ramp up in growth. But right now it's putting out these nice squat little, pretty typical pitchers. But you can start to see the peristome have some ridges on it, and they're more squat and oblong shaped rather than the nice tall tubular shapes that the mature plants will get, especially the upper pitchers. But one thing that I've heard that you can do is to break off the lid, and then you can do a slow release fertilizer directly into the pitchers that way. I've done that on a couple of the lower ones, and the upper ones you can see here are a little bit bigger, that I can actually get the slow release fertilizer pellet inside without having to break off the lid. What's really cool about the species too is that as you get some mature upper pitchers, it's a very dark overall pitcher, but the inner wall of the pitcher is stark white. It's a very sharp contrast between the reddish dark brown peristome and that white throat. So it's a beautiful, beautiful, very sought after Nepenthes. One thing I also noted is that everywhere along the pitcher is pretty soft and malleable, except the part of the pitcher that actually contains the digestive fluid. That's actually pretty rigid, which is a little unusual in my experience with the different amount of pitchers that I keep. That a lot of them are pretty rigid to begin with, but the peristome itself, you can see on some of the more mature specimens, they actually come together and form this very toothy, defensive looking thing. And we still don't know necessarily why pitcher plants have evolved this type of morphology. Maybe it's to help draw in insects and have them kind of hit to the center of the trap. And so when they do get drunk or poisoned, in many cases of carnivorous plants, they actually get dizzy enough and fall in with those the peristome teeth directing it to the middle of the trap. So it's a very interesting, very cool Nepenthes. Like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of Nepenthes that share this very toothy peristome, but Nepenthes edwardsiana is unique, really. They're very iconic looking in the sense that they're very tall, very tubular, very distinctly ridged peristomes, very highly developed peristomes with very exaggerated teeth. And it's the combination of the pitcher shape and the peristome shape that really let you know that it's an edwardsiana. However, there is a naturally occurring hybrid within this edwardsiana range. So the species that edwardsiana does tend to hybridize naturally with quite often is Nepenthes villosa. Now villosa does have a very toothy peristome as well, but they're very squat pitchers, a beautiful Nepenthes nonetheless, but it's a very big difference. And from what I understand, that naturally occurring hybrid is actually called Nepenthes X Harryana. And so I've seen several Harryanas for sale, and it would be kind of cool to get a hybrid of those two to get that hybrid vigor. One thing to note that is Edwardsiana is very closely related to Macrophylla and Villosa, which share those typical highly toothed peristomes, but of course it's the pitcher shape itself in conjunction with the peristome morphology that gives you the for sure identification on what you're looking at. So keeping these guys, it's not too bad if you can get through the first 8 to 12 months where their growth is very, very slow. But as soon as they start to put on some size, then their growth really increases. And fortunately for me, in the garage greenhouse where I keep this guy, which by the way is in ambient conditions, it's not being kept in an alpine setup or a highland setup, which blows my mind because come summertime, some of those temps can reach close to 88 degrees, and this thing is showing no signs of being upset. One caveat to that, though, is Edwardsiana, Hamada, different highland species like that are known. If you get them upset, they quickly decline, and usually you'll lose a 15, 20-year specimen just over one little hiccup, one little day of inconsistency. So I think I am playing Russian roulette a little bit with keeping it in the ambient condition of the garage greenhouse. But so far it's going well. And I was going to say, the nice thing about having it out there is it's exposed to lots of ants. We have a ton of ants here. And so a lot of my pictures have a pitcher full of, hundreds and hundreds of ants. And that seems to be one of the natural food sources for young Nepenthes edwardsiana, especially in cultivation. So it is best to keep them in a 50% sphagnum mix of, or 50% mix of sphagnum and perlite, and then moist without being too moist. Now, in the wild, they actually are exposed to highly moist situations, highly moist conditions, but it seems like in cultivation we have a harder time maintaining healthy plants in that really high water environment. They do require cooler temps for sure, and I'm sure I'm going to have to move my Edwardsiana into the highland greenhouse at some point. I've got some close-ups here. You can start to see the peristome that I was talking about. It's ridged. It's beautiful. The color markings on this are fantastic. I have kind of an overall view right here of how I keep this guy. So far, pests, I haven't had any pests. It is starting to leaf jump quite a bit, and it was sent to me with a little Drosera capensis seedling. I've since removed that Drosera capensis just so I can really focus on just keeping the Edwardsiana alive without having to worry about the capensis too much. But so far it's going really well, and I can't wait to see this thing really put on some more mature upper pitchers, and that will be an awesome sight. Remember guys, if you like what you see here, you like these close-ups, you like the new filming format, please let me know. I've had some great feedback so far. It's been amazing. Any macro photography shots that you want to specifically see of any of these plants, for sure hit me up. But I'm really enjoying breaking out the macro photography and getting really up close and personal on some of these guys. So hopefully it comes through on the blue screen and whatnot. If you do like what you see, make sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe because it helps out a ton. And we will see you guys on the next adventure.